Thank you so much, Sandy. I really appreciate the introduction, and it's so good to see all of your faces, and definitely very pleased to be here. The Michigan State Land Bank Authority is so pleased to sponsor this session and this conference. We are big supporters of all of the work that each of your affiliates are doing every day, and want to increase our ability to support your work and partner and through trainings and land and financial support. So we are here to talk about that. So I will just say that Jen Acosta, I will quickly read her her bio, although I know many of you have probably heard of her already. So I'll try to summarize. There's a lot. In short, Jen is a real estate developer from the Bay region, but it's more of a passion that you will get from her than your normal training or trainer. The passion for teaching about incremental development, it goes through the Incremental Development Alliance, which is a national organization for which Jen teaches. But in addition, it's a passion for Michigan communities and helping everybody that she talks with, including everyone on this training, to be able to look at a project and figure out new tools to fix or fill the gaps. And then also people who want to do this work that maybe haven't had the opportunity to figure out the access to doing it. There's a lot of passion there and a lot of experience teaching. So thank you, Jen. I will just say in short, this is a precursor. So those of you who are watching this, please hold your calendars for Thursday, November 18th at 9 a.m. There will be a follow-up workshop to this session. And so that you'll get a lot of information today as you are absorbing everything. Remember that there's more information coming during, again, a 3-hour workshop on November 18th from 9 a.m. to noon. And that will also be virtual. And that will be as a follow-up to help continue these conversations. And the State Land Bank is very pleased to be sponsoring that. And finally, we are excited to be rolling out a pre-development assistance program. And so that would be something that we will share more information with you all via email, that you can see actually that we are interested in trying to provide more, especially the smaller affiliates. We want to provide some more financial tools for you, including some pre-development dollars. So we will follow up via email. And thank you so much again. Jen Acosta.
My goodness. Thank you, everyone. I am so excited to be here. I'm going to dig right in. So this morning's talk, we're talking all about real estate for regular people. And I couldn't be speaking to an audience that understands that more this morning. So it's rare that I get to give this kind of a talk to a full group of developers, right? Like you guys understand exactly what it's like to build housing for people and why it's so important. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Dow Chemical Company for sponsoring this morning's talk, and Habitat, as well as State Land Bank, for having me. As Emily mentioned, up next, we are going to be having a small scale development seminar. So that'll start at 9 a.m. on November 18th. Please hold that on your calendars. You will have my colleague and friend, Allie Quinlan-Thurman, out of Fayetteville, Arkansas, and she does a ton of single family development and small scale multifamily development, and she's an architect as well. So that's going to be a really great program coming up that will build upon this morning's session. So about me, I am absolutely driven to help people have their dream spaces to build wealth, right? Whether that's an entrepreneur having the space for their business to start off, whether that's someone that can live in a duplex, right? If you can buy a double in your 20s and have the rental income from the other side of it, pay down your mortgage and build that kind of wealth for yourself and that stability. I'm all about how land can be impactful in our lives and how it can build and shape our communities. So this is what I love to do. I know that this is a little bit of a different scale, but I always like to update the slide and think about it. And lately I've been really thinking about, what is that quality interior, or how do we take these cycles of disinvestment and how do we really break them? And how do we create some space that's meaningful and has a higher purpose? So these are some of the spaces that I've designed and developed over the years. I turned a former bank lobby into a big blank white shell that an entrepreneur created a restaurant in. It's all farm to table across the state of Michigan, right in Bay City. I've also taken some really ugly left behind spaces and turn them into housing, because my community in my hometown had so much vacant commercial buildings and commercial space, and we didn't have housing choice, right? We didn't have the kinds of downtown living that people wanted, so that we could actually retain retirees and attract young professionals, and free up some homes in the neighborhoods for people that wanted to be able to buy their first home. So I am a senior faculty member for the Incremental Development Alliance. I have been teaching and doing trainings with them for the last, I think I'm going on 5 years now. And our mission is to cultivate 1,000 small developers in the cities that they love. So what that means is that we teach and we nurture implementers, right? The doers. How do we train those small business owners and neighborhood advocates to actually do the things and invest and own their own real estate, right? How do we train them to become developers themselves? How do we coach civic groups and government agencies that can really improve that ecosystem for locally led development, right? And why is that important? And then how do we connect, right? Neighborhood level doers to celebrate their success and share their notes, right? I am speaking to an entire audience of neighborhood doers right now and developers. So I can't wait. I'm hoping we have enough time to open up for Q&A. So this talk, first of all, we're going to go over, why we're all here. That incremental development's a great opportunity, why it's necessary, how you can do it even more because you're already doing it, and why it matters. So first, if you guys can sound off in the chat, someone will have to tell me because I can't fully see the chat right now, and I don't think you guys want me to be playing around on Zoom, but on a scale of 1 to 10, here we go. Are you getting the kinds of real estate projects that you want to see, right? Give me a 10 if you're seeing like exactly what you want to see in your neighborhoods, that everything is happening, you're getting exactly what you want, or like a 1 if you're not getting what your community needs. All right, we've got a 6. Jump in the chat. Some 1s. Yep. And I'm speaking to audience like, you get it? Like, we've had the most critical year for housing. We need housing. So yeah, and when we do these, this is what we see is we usually see a lot of like 10s, like our market is so hot, or we see 1s and 2s. So this is really normal. So we're gonna get into the why of that a little bit, right? So why not? Why are we not getting what we want to see? So based on our experience, it's because of specialization, right? We create specialists, people that they only do biotech, they only do certain things. We don't necessarily have generalists when it comes to real estate development. And oftentimes developers are disconnected from the local needs, right? It can be an extractive model. You'll have some firm that's coming in from out of state or out of the area and coming into your community to build something, but it's not necessarily built on that grassroots feedback of what the community needs, right? And then of course, you've got regulations and the financial tools that are available, they favor inflexible building types, right? They favor a very specific kind of building type that's out there. We could all talk about labor shortage right now, and we could talk about how development and local development has really been a lost art. So it's a self-reinforcing model that is what we're seeing right now, right? We're seeing that, development doesn't necessarily benefit locals. You get a lot of neighborhood opposition when you're putting forward a development project. And things are causing, more fees, more regulation, more barriers to entry. Then you've got only big developers that can afford to do projects and buildings that are only profitable for big developers, right? So we keep seeing this cycle that's been happening for decades now across the United States. And we really work toward lowering the barrier for entry so that local people can build what their neighborhoods actually need. That is our goal. So now we're going to talk about why there is so much opportunity in incremental development. So first and foremost, when I say incremental development, I mean anything 0 to 3 stories, and that could be commercial or residential. And it's for and by your neighbors, and it evolves, right? You guys are all affiliates in motion. Nothing about community is stagnant. This is not meant to be forever, but how can it evolve? How can it take shape? How can it change, right? You see people that they talk about, well, why is it over in Europe? They've been remodeling the same buildings for hundreds of years and they've been, 35 different uses, but we build disposable buildings that are one thing and then they're not meant to kind of change. So how do we really break the cycle of this, and how do we build locally and incrementally? We firmly believe, I especially very much believe, that cities are better when they're built and maintained and owned by locals, right? And the why, you all know this. Local people care. We have skin in the game. We walk our dogs down that street, 3 times a week. If you're me and you have my crazy schedule, a lot more of you maybe like 3 times a day. We're more likely to build lovable buildings. I build lovable buildings because I can't walk through my hometown without seeing everyone that I've, gone to high school with, and they know my parents. And if I build some hideous building, my parents are going to hear about it. My grandparents are going to hear about it. So I might as well make it lovable. And we hire locals, right? We keep that money circulating back in our local economy, local accountants, local tradespeople, your local plumber, people that are going to maintain your building. And it's really important to see, feel, and respond to feedback. We know exactly what people are thinking, and we're out in our communities all the time asking what our communities really need. And that's how we help them evolve. So it's a process that builds skills and relationships. And when we talk about, are you getting the developments you need? Some of you probably thought of buildings like this, right? Are we really getting what our communities need? Maybe not necessarily, right? I mean, this is kind of an extractive model of development, right? Building bigger buildings like this, it's only accessible to big developers. They're the kinds of projects that maximize profit with the regulations that are out there. They require new infrastructure for our cities, or larger infrastructure. And they're auto-dependent, mass produced, and they're fragile, right? If the market completely changes, it's very hard to repurpose it into something else. So we prefer to look at a time-tested approach, right? Simple, flexible buildings. This is a scale of a neighborhood. This is a 3-unit building, right? There's 2 in the front, and then you have an accessory dwelling unit in the back. It fits the scale of the neighborhood. Should the market really need that to become, a simple single family home and not a small scale multi-family home, it could easily be adaptable as such. It could even be adaptable to a small office building. And these are regenerative, right? These are accessible. You can build it on the existing infrastructure. It can respond to the needs of the neighborhood. It's going to increase your walkability, right? And it fits for multi-generational development and for people of all life stages. It also has that strong sense of place. This also applies to commercial. I know that we don't focus on commercial so much through here, but we have seas of parking and things that are fragile. I currently sit in Midland, Michigan, and we have a giant old Kmart store that's sitting vacant. It's a really big lift to figure out what to redo with it. And we talk about how our neighbors do it better. How is this adaptable? How can this shift and change? How can our business districts be stronger? And I'm going to talk for a little bit about why this is so necessary, right? Joe Minicozzi's work with Urban 3, many of you are probably familiar with it, but he actually analyzed tax rolls and the revenue based on our land use when it comes to development. So everything that you see in the red actually costs more to maintain than the tax revenue that it generates. The green buildings that you see, it's your traditional, like your downtown, your central business district. How does that help, right? How does that, because that can actually, the density of it creates enough tax revenue for its infrastructure. So it's helping pay for all of that more auto-oriented development that you see throughout. But it doesn't necessarily have to be big and high rise. You can have great density in a neighborhood scale format, right? This building is kind of funny because it's literally green, but Grayson, who is our content creator with the Incremental Development Alliance, her friend lived in this. This is an actual building. This is 6 unit. This is a super efficient, great quality building that exists, that is absolutely paying more than its fair share of taxes to the city, so that we have a resilient community, right? We can't have our communities going bankrupt. We can't have our cities that can't afford the roads and the infrastructure that it takes, schools and things like that. Our city limits are finite, right? We do have limited taxable values, limited debt, limited land. So obviously this is Lafayette, Louisiana, but you can go look at any of Joe Minicozzi's work with Urban 3, and he has this modeled in so many communities across the country, and it always stands true. Some of you are probably thinking, well, if I get land donated, no matter where it is, I'm building on it because we need housing. And absolutely you should, but how can we also advocate for what can really benefit the community and why that's important? Or maybe within city limits, we're building a little bit higher density in order to do so. So I always highly advocate for Strong Towns. If you're not familiar with the work of Strong Towns, they put out content all the time and really discuss the value of learning that resilient tax base and development patterns. And it's a great resource that's out there for anyone. So getting to green, right? How do we build that tax base? How do we focus on filling gaps within our neighborhoods? We reuse existing buildings whenever possible. That's kind of my thing. That's a lot of what I've done. And then we enlist each other to help, right? We have to build confidence. We have to build momentum within our neighborhoods and then repeat. And we don't have to start with the biggest project, but anything to kind of start moving in the right direction is really where we need to go. So we talk a lot about, how do you develop and create buildings that give more than they take, right? And it's the little things. It's the street trees. It's the bike racks. It's the dog dishes that are outside. It's putting an affordable home in the back, having lighting, having a great storefront, right? How do you actually do the little touches that locals do because they understand their neighborhood and they care about their citizens and they listen to that feedback. So I think at this point, you all know that no one's coming to do this for us, right? This is the work that we all have to do. So I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit, even though this is commercial, about what the difference is on creating a job versus building wealth. To start a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, you have to have $500,000 upfront in order to get that franchise model. So you're sending that money off to a corporation, and then you're going to create a store management job and some, also some traditional, like probably minimum wage employee jobs. Whereas if you open your own donut shop, and these things, they're doing the same exact thing, right? You're frying dough. Um, in a local model, you can build that $500,000 of wealth over a lifetime and it's retained, right? That building and that business owner are retaining that wealth, and that's likely getting spent a lot more within your local economy with the same exact business model. So when we talk about that subtle difference of, entrepreneurship and development and local ownership, we're really looking at, how can you keep that wealth within your community and have those less extractive versions within your community and more intrinsic generators. So this is an actual donut shop, by the way. It's in Duncanville, Texas. I know Dunkin' Donuts in Duncanville, Texas. Don't get me started. Monty Anderson, who's one of the co-founders of the Incremental Development Alliance, this is his building. So he developed this and got the donut store, and then with the apartment in the back, the family that actually owned the donut store, they lived in that apartment for a while until they could rent it out to someone else. So that way they were all in one. They didn't have a separate mortgage or anything like that. They were able to build wealth for themselves just through this model. And all they do is, great donuts and a better cup of coffee than anywhere else, right? So strong locals and strong places, right? That's what we advocate for. And that's the biggest piece that you all are champions and that we hope that you can advocate for as well in your communities, right? How can families own buildings that earn an income? How can we provide the housing options across all life stages that we need? Build those skills and relationships, and then stay, return, and contribute to the place that you love. How do you just keep creating a better cycle that isn't anti-fragile, right? That is more robust, that is more resilient. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how you can do it as well. Let me adjust and see how we're doing on time here. But so this is something you're all probably super familiar with. This is the current state of development as we know it, right? You have the small and incremental on one side, and then you have large and master planned. So you can't really have something that's going to be large and master planned as well as entrepreneurial and bootstrapped. I tell you, many have tried and many have failed. They're mismatched requirements. And you're all bootstrapped organizations. I think too, there's a reason that we're sitting here and your affiliates are spread throughout and you're all within your local communities, right? There isn't like one master habitat across the United States or one per every state saying, nope, this is what each community gets and we're gonna decide what every community gets. No, they want you to be like grassroots. It's that feedback loop. It's so important to know your local opportunities by being boots on the ground, by being small, by being incremental and building over time. I will tell you, and you already know this, there is not enough small developers to fill the demand. I know this because as soon as I completed one project, I don't even read the amount of LinkedIn messages that I get at this point because there are so many opportunities that communities need small developers. Communities need people to come and change their buildings and to add infill development and to build housing. And we don't have enough developers, right? If I could say yes to every project that came across my desk, I would be busy for the next 20 years. So here's where you come in. And there's a low barrier to entry. So first and foremost, we always say all you have to do is learn about the essentials of a strong neighborhood. This is something that you guys already do day in and day out. It's something that you're going to be working on doing within this conference for the next couple of days. This is your feedback loops. And when you're out there consistently talking to residents in your neighborhood, you're thinking about it. Secondly, how do buildings make money? I know your model's a little bit different than what we usually talk about, but we will be covering it in the small scale development 101 section. So that 3-hour session that we're going to have in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about how buildings make money. We also offer boot camp courses. And then, so we really talk about finding your farm, right? Observing and being a good neighbor. And when I say find your farm, Monty Anderson really coined that term for the Incremental Development Alliance, because finding your farm is about cultivating the land underneath you, right? We cultivate it a little bit differently than farmers. We cultivate it into businesses and places and housing and strong neighborhoods. But how do you do that same kind of cultivation? And it's really through committing yourself to a place. It's committing yourself to a place that you love, that needs you, right? I moved back here 9 years ago from Miami. And, we chose to move back to Michigan to raise our kids here. And I was looking around my hometown of Bay City, Michigan. I was working downtown, and it looked a lot like this picture, right? There was nothing but buildings that were largely vacant, needed love more than a little bit of love, struggling local businesses. And I had worked in real estate development before in Miami, but I'll tell you what, too, Miami really didn't need me. And the scale for me to jump in and do that kind of work in Miami, the costs, that ability to, that barrier to entry was so high. There's no way that I could have done the work or created the impact that I've been able to create in Bay City just in the last 6 years. So, really thinking about, how those neighborhoods that you walk through or drive past every day, how your residents are really thinking about what they need and what those areas need around them, and how you can help people successfully build wealth for themselves through housing. It's all so critical, and that why is a big piece of it. And then, how do you use your skills, right? How do you hustle a little bit to make a project cash flow, or to help those people in need? How do you help implement those skills and the tools that you have available to really create the strongest projects possible? And we always say, take the next smallest step, right? So, how does a lemonade stand with a proof of concept become a cafe? How does it become that next great thing? And you repeat, right? Sometimes, if you're like me, you need to come down off of a project a little bit before you're fully ready to repeat. But it is cyclical, and it is one of those things. Like, how do you continue to build trust with your neighbors and with your community? How do you continue to build skills that allow you to do it a little bit better next time, make it a little bit more resilient next time? How do you build that amazing reputation that you're able to do incredible work within your community, and that you're one of the strongest in helping people? And how do you create that really resilient team? And really, put that number on the amount of wealth that Habitat has helped people build, right? It's so critical. So we always say, you just focus on building a stronger neighborhood, one project at a time. You don't have to know the next one right away, but focus on what's in front of you. And even with doing the little projects, right? The little school gardens, market stalls, anything that you're doing from a revitalization aspect, how can you do that to create a more energized neighborhood, and be able to do the heavier lifts, and help your neighbors do the same, right? That's a big piece of it. How do you help the other housing agencies in your community? How do you help the small scale developers? How do you share your knowledge and collaborate however possible in order to help your neighbors do the same? And employ, support, and partner with locals, right? So y'all know this because you do this all the time, and your volunteers are your locals, right? Your volunteers that are helping you are the local companies that are giving back and believe in things within your communities. And, this kind of a business model too, when we think about density and we think about how we can locate near our business districts or locate new housing projects, especially, more dense multifamily projects closer to those business districts, we're supporting our small business economy and we're retaining more wealth locally versus, having projects that people can't walk to. So the secret sauce, not to be a kindergarten teacher or anything, but honestly, the secret sauce is just that you care. It's just how you care. It's how you cultivate your place. It's how deeply entrenched you get into that. It's, waking up every morning and putting 2 feet on the floor and putting a smile on your face and getting ready to dive in. Development and really, the systems around it. It can be brutal. There can be a lot of no's. It can be very difficult work. But also the amount that you care about it, you will get up every day and you will do that work. And it will be so rewarding. So it looks like when this all comes together, projects by locals who hire locals, multi-unit properties, often owner occupied, having a long-term commitment to the neighborhood, and then designing for your occupant success, right? So I've been at it 6 years now. In Bay City and Midland, I have developed 67 residential units and 40 commercial spaces, which is kind of mind-boggling that I've been able to have that amount of impact in a short period of time, right? When you start thinking overall about how cultivating and doing this kind of work small scale in a hometown is amazing, right? It can be so incredibly impactful, and the biggest thing for me and what keeps me going on why I care, it's walking down the streets and running into the entrepreneurs that chose to rent with us to start that dream business of theirs. It's running into residents that live in one of our buildings and finding out what's happening in their lives. It's seeing the babies that live in buildings, which as a mom for me, I take that so personally because I remember walking through vacant commercial buildings and people would say like, it can't be done. It's never going to be done. I cried when the electricity was turned on because I had been in this building in freezing cold for 2 years with no heat, no electricity, like taking photos on my phone in the freezing cold winter, and my phone would die at 50% just to like do the historic tax credit photo log. And I mean, to see that there's life in these structures again, right? To have someone who used to be a resident in one of my buildings that now lives 10 minutes away from me, and she wants to be a developer and we're partnering on a project to do it ourselves, right? That's what cultivating actually produces in the long term. And I couldn't be more grateful to be part of that system and that cycle within my hometown. And it looks like having, what's incremental development on the ground. I'm going to leave this up because if there's other like building nerds like me on this call, these are step buildings. So Grayson Johnson, with the Incremental Development Alliance, she really created like, what are these workforce buildings that we have? Like, what are these like 0 to 3-story buildings that really shape our communities and that are the incremental available by locals to build and to develop, right? So your house hacks, those tend to be, remodels or ways to like add things based on code, right? So adding a detached accessory dwelling unit, adding a guest suite. Maybe it's a flex shed that like has a little business component to it, right? How do we incubate commercial, local commercial, right? So things that our entrepreneurs are really accessible to them. Our local entrepreneurs, I mean, I also work as a commercial real estate agent. I don't get to show the buildings, the big, like vacant for a year buildings that say 3,000 square feet, build to suit, right? My local entrepreneurs that are starting up, they can't afford those, right? That's not their kind of building, but they can start in temporary event space. They can start in pop-ups. They can start in maker spaces. They can start in downtown Main Street buildings. And that's, really where we need to kind of meet people where they are, not where we want them to be. And then really looking at, okay, what are those compact singles? That skinny house that I'm staring at right in the middle of my screen, that skinny house goes on a 30-foot wide lot, or less, right? How do we build the cottages? How do we do, townhouses, row homes, your stacked duplexes? I'm a big fan of a double. I want more doubles. I would like all of the doubles personally in Bay City to be owner occupied versus owned by landlords, right? Because I have a lot of people in our community. We're a very affordable community, but we need more owner occupied opportunities for wealth building and wealth generation. And if I could get those local landlords to instead fix up some of our vacant buildings in the business districts so that we could have more housing opportunities for our locals to build generational wealth, it would be highly impactful for our community. So this is one of my favorite slides. I'm a big fan of step buildings. So what do we mean when we say STEP also? Like it's an acronym. So STEP stands for small scale, time enhanced, entrepreneurial, and purposeful, right? It's a one step at a time approach to building cities. And when, I talk about our workhorse buildings, how are they hardworking? How do they actually earn an income and earn their value and hold their keep? So this is, we have kind of the commercial version here, but how do you actually step up, right? You can start with businesses and tents and push carts and pop-up shops to become parking lot markets and get up and running. You could have a home office and a workshop, and then you get into a Main Street building, or you get the little downtown shop and single story to get to like the Main Street mixed use. And all of our communities have all of these building types in some way, shape, or form. I've been part of helping develop a marketplace where we had a cookie business that wanted to start, and she rented the smallest possible space that she could find with us, which is essentially like a kiosk. And she knew that she had to sell like 17 dozen cookies in order to make it work like a week. And she had a line out the door every day for months when we first opened, so much so that because of that one kiosk, she was able to hire another baker. She bought 2 more ovens within the first month. And then within 3 months, her and her husband were able to leave their full-time jobs and take this on full-time. And now they have their own brick and mortar. They sell and distribute to all sorts of places throughout the entire region, right? That one kiosk changed their entire lives, that one simple opportunity. And that's what we talk about when we talk about steps, right? I mean, they had to be ready and they had to take their leap and they had to do all of this work. It's not necessarily easy, but with that opportunity, so much more can come from it, and you can have incredible opportunities. So now we're going to talk about step families. So these are our house hacks, right? A little bit more upfront, right? So entrepreneurial adaptations to existing homes. And this is to diversify housing options or to generate an income. And why does it matter to diversify housing options? If you've read, I forget the name exactly, Metropolitan America by Arthur Nelson. So currently we have 63% of American households only have 1 to 2 people living in them, right? 1 to 2 people, but only 11% of new homes being built are 1 to 2 bedrooms. The majority of our homes being built are 3 and 4 bedroom and large scale homes, right? So we have a supply and demand issue. So if we can diversify our housing options and offer more housing choice, we can actually match those smaller households that we have. And commercial incubation, what are the low cost ways? And I love the word validate in here when I think of, like, we never helped grow the cookie company, right? Um, there was an opportunity that was low enough cost that she was willing to take the risk, right? She could get through that, like, okay, this is a low risk way for me to start. And all it did was validate the quality of her product and her business model and her entrepreneurial spirit, right? It validated her in a sense where it was that opportunity that she could really grow her company. And missing housing, right? This has become, I think, more and more, and missing middle housing is beyond just a building type, but I think we all know that it's also an income bracket, right? We don't have homes that are within that middle income range. And we would probably get more of them if we could diversify some of our options as well. So how do these fit right into single family areas, right? How can we kind of have these that sit on the blocks and on the streets to offer the kinds of homes that people are really looking for? I just finished renovating 10 courtyard condos here in Midland. And my number one people that love them and love to buy them are people that are getting closer to retirement. And I have a lot of single women, and they feel more safe and more comfortable having that density of one another around them. And that's really pivotal. And then how do you have your neighborhood node buildings, right? Anyone else, just because the commercial economy's changed so much in our Rust Belt and Lake Belt cities throughout Michigan, where we have these vacant business districts sitting around. So how can we also use them to create walkable neighborhood destinations? How can we do infill around them? How can we take those surface parking lots nearby that aren't needed and create more housing that supports these small scale businesses? Right? They're small enough where they're welcome in residential areas. And, especially speaking in my area, some of them are still struggling. And, we need that density of housing to really support them. So now let's get off the sketch and get a little bit more into reality. We joke that these are, maybe future faculty with Incremental Development Alliance, but this is Monty Anderson. I've mentioned him a couple times. He's one of the founders of the Incremental Development Alliance, and he created the DeSoto Marketplace. So he rehabbed and renovated a former kind of like big box shopping center. And these snow cone entrepreneurs starting off their business, I think they're 11 and 13 in this photo, right? 11 and 13-year-olds just starting a snow cone business in Texas, great market, but it was an opportunity in which they could. This house hack you'll see here is, this is multi-unit, right? This is a little guest suite off the side here. It doesn't even have a full kitchen, but it's walkable. It doesn't need to, and it's really well designed. A lot of people wouldn't notice that's an additional place. And this is in Atlanta. So Atlanta has a major need for housing. And this is like transit oriented, it's a 2-bed accessory dwelling unit cottage with an attached guest suite, right? So you have a 2-bedroom cottage on it with an attached guest suite. And this is all an ADU, meaning it probably sits behind a single family home and adds more great development and housing options within this neighborhood. Quadplexes. So this is Ryan Terry's quadplexes down in Bryan, Texas. And he started this on an RFP from city of Bryan, Texas, and they wanted this whole site developed and they wanted it done right away. And he came in and he was like, I'll do it in phases. Let me do a couple. And then with those as comps, I will expand and I will continue and do more. But not everything necessarily all at once. Alyssa Shelton, this is in Hamtramck. So she bought this vacant little bank building and she made it pop-up commercial community space. So there was a bookshop in here that was all volunteer run. The history of this building was that it was a bank, and then it was it was a Chinese restaurant for a long time that was famous for their chop suey. So she's called it Bank Suey. So this is the Bank Suey building in Hamtramck. Um, she went and like redid the plaster herself with her mom and their family. And she does all kinds of layered on community programming and different things within the space. This is in Albion, Michigan. So Kyle did this project. I was fortunate enough, this is, I think, my very first time teaching for the Incremental Development Alliance. Kyle was in the audience. And now I've had the pleasure of like even teaching alongside him. And he bought this building and completely renovated it here in Michigan. So he lives in the upstairs with his partner and their dog as well. This is mine. So this is a little bit larger scale, but this was a former bank building that had been sitting vacant for a couple of years. And every developer in town kind of taken a crack at it. I was 6 months into starting my company and thought, I'll take the meeting. There's no way I'm taking on this building. I can't do it, right? If other people have tried, they can't do it. There's no way that I could do it. And it was covered in this metal panel facade, locally known as cheese grater. And all the lower levels were completely re-engineered on it. So it was missing. So we turned this into 26 apartments. And then the restaurant space on the lower floor. And we earmarked the other side of that retail space in case our restaurant needs to grow there. And then I have one more small business on the other side of it, right? So big kind of a larger scale mixed use rehab where we're taking vacant commercial buildings and turning them into housing and something that's more purposeful, right? That adaptable building. Bernice Radels, this is her Main Street mixed use project. And she sits right in this like very, very diverse cultural enclave in Buffalo. And they actually like, she submitted her building for this arts thing to like put up a mural, and sure enough, they picked her building. And so this whole building got covered in this beautiful mural, which is just phenomenal. And then she got to like march in the parade about it. It was a whole thing, which is just spectacular. So how do these little projects happen? They're little, but they're impactful, right? First of all, we have to grow more small developers, right? Whether it's full-time or a side hustle. And you know the ins and outs of what it's like to develop within your communities. You're all developers. So how can you also help and coach and support this and champion this within your communities, right? Obviously knowing that, you know, investors, and how do we also encourage and champion for local investment, and then just support all of the changes that allow both the investors and the small developers to do their work well. So yes, you're all small scale development champions. We always say, you know, absolutely absorb all the strong towns. Do the addition by subtraction. And then if you feel motivated or lost, come talk to us. And thankfully, you know, we have another opportunity to talk to you guys in a couple of weeks here too. So if you have any of the following, property of any size or any kind, a business that needs a home, cash or access to credit, skills related to the development process, and a lot of hustle and local relationships, and a why. If you have any of these, you know, you're already ahead of the pack in being a small scale developer. And that's why it really matters. So I will just say, you know, we always say like the incremental alone, it can't save us from extraction. It can't save us from having that big outside developer that kind of comes in. But local people are the ones who are going to be taking the best steps, right? Because you all care, because you have skin in the game. You're more likely to build lovable buildings, and to hire locals to keep that money circulating back in your local economy. And you've got the touch points. You can see it, you can feel it, you can respond to feedback, you can build on that momentum. So with Incremental Development Alliance, we do training on locals to build the essentials of a strong neighborhood. This is, Bernice did a pie shop. So they allowed accessory dwelling commercial back in Buffalo with the new zoning code, which allowed her to take this building, and she rents that small little pie shop for $500 a month to a lady that makes incredible pies, and good coffee within her neighborhood. And then there's a tenant above it. This is another alumni project that was in Portland. So, doing these kinds of projects, whether it's in good times or in tough times. This is in Grayson's neighborhood when COVID hit. This coffee shop that was allowed to be open for takeout completely shifted within like a matter of days and added in grocery, right? They added grocery into their business model because it was important and it's what their community needed, right? Nothing is stagnant in community development. Everything that we do, it's little by little, and it builds upon itself. And local entrepreneurs and local people that can really be flexible with what we're able to offer, it just makes us more resilient. And that little bit of love and that cozy, we put the there, like have that sense of place, right? Flower boxes and dog dishes, and all the little touches that aren't basic. And I guess I think of that extractive model where now and then the big architecture firms like, we'll just put 3 kinds of paneling on these with really like ineffective balconies and people will love it. But it's not really as lovable as it could be. So you can follow us at Incremental Development Alliance. We also have workshops and things like that, but they're coming up and they're available. So with that, I am going to turn it over for questions, I believe.
There was a question that came up in the chat, and the question was, how do you balance the desire to be financially successful while also providing affordable housing to tenants?
Yeah, so a couple of ways. I think, there is so much of what I've personally done, I've had to build a marketplace, right? So to be financially successful and get those investors and have some sort of return, I've had to do that. But I also don't push rents to unachievable levels. I think the more that we've done marketplace, because I was developing in Bay City, which was so affordable. Our community was able to free up more housing in the neighborhoods by building choice in market rate downtown, if that makes sense. And we keep our rents affordable because people stay longer. I don't want to turn over all of the time. I want to have more opportunities for people to stay until they're ready to move on. And the number one reason that we lose tenants is because they decide that they've fallen in love with Bay City enough that they choose to live there and they decide to buy a home. Brian?
Hello, Jen. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's not so much a question. I just want to say thank you so much. We're so happy you came back 9 years ago, because I mean, you have put a spark in downtown that's just amazing. I mean, and throughout the whole city, really. She's talking about the market that she put together, and she also after a few years, she put city offices in there, which now we can go there. We have places we can go work, and I mean, it's just so many good things going on. You're redoing the riverfront, so we just wanted to say thank you, and we're so happy you're back in Bay City.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to create 1,000 more people that care for their communities just like I do all across the state.
Me too, which is why I invited you here to join us. wow, I don't know about all of you, but I was feverishly taking down notes. But when I met Jenifer and I listened to her, I thought she is Habitat for Humanity with maybe more of an entrepreneurial spirit than what I'm accustomed to experiencing with our Habitat for Humanities locally. But when you think about it, just think about this. There's a huge opportunity for live work opportunities that Jenifer gave many examples there. People starting up, that's really that transformational change, that growing generational wealth, success, whether it's people who are refugees or people starting out, people making a life change who want to open that business. They need somewhere to live as well that's affordable to them. You each have an office. That's an opportunity when you move offices, or that could be an income generating opportunity for you as a not-for-profit business to have office space that's shared with other renters and so forth. You have restores. I mean, when Jenifer was talking about buildings without heat and leaking, I think that most of you have had those experiences with your restores. You are developing commercial space. You have commercial spaces. And then, bringing it home with creating various size, styles, scales of housing. And all of you are dabbling in this as developers. But hopefully, if you're not already thinking this way and already participating in development activities as what Jenifer is sharing with us here, hopefully your thinking caps are on and we can begin to think about ourselves as developers. I know that when I talk about you, or if I'm quoted in a newspaper release or something of that nature, I'm saying Habitat for Humanity developers, Habitat for Humanity builders, as opposed to referencing you as affiliates only. You are builders and developers. So please keep your questions coming. Hopefully you've marked November 18th at 9 a.m., which we will be sharing more information about that opportunity. But Jenifer, I'm going to turn it back to you and the affiliates for questions. And I want to thank all of you for participating.
No, thank you so much. I wish I had like another 20 slides of just like amazing projects or my dream projects that it's such an incredible opportunity. I think that you all have the ability to build homes for owner occupants that are affordable. Like it's so critical to everything that Michigan really needs right now. And I mean, in my head, I just daydream of like how you could do that, and with the way that you guys can hold mortgages. Like you have more tools accessible to you than what I have. And sometimes because of that, like it's hard for me to get investors to be like, well, we're going to sell them. We're going to sell them really affordably. And they're not coming in. But you're so mission driven that you have so much opportunity to really create, multi-family that is owner occupied, and to build density in ways, and to cultivate your neighborhoods where you can see those opportunities on, we all, I think, overlook the vacant lots that we've been seeing so many times, or the surface parking lots that you're like, well, it's a surface parking lot. That's what it's always been, right? I bought a vacant lot, a contaminated gas station site for $9,000 on Center Avenue in Bay City, because I drove by it all the time, saw that there was a for sale sign, called on it, did all of my own environmental due diligence, like went down to the DEQ, found out that, the statute of limitations had expired on different things, but because it was bought by a lawyer who'd done his due diligence, that like the DEQ on the wells, there was a $73,000 lien on the property, and the tanks weren't mediated right, and there was probably, petroleum contamination on the site. And I just kept digging, thinking, well, wouldn't it be great if we could have housing back on Center Avenue rather than this vacant eyesore that's been there for so long? And I took, a purchase option that I extended out for a year and continued to ask the questions and ask people, well, why is it vacant? Well, can you help me? The DEQ released the lien, right? A decades old lien. I grew up on that street. Like, I used to ride my bike past that lot. That lot had been vacant since I was a child, right? And just seeing it all the time and asking why, and asking for help, and people knowing that I had the ability to do it. Now, affording the cost of new construction in today's economy has been difficult. That's kind of a separate piece on that, and finding the timing to do it right. But one of those step buildings is the 12-plex that I plan to break ground and build there. And now it's this little step building that it's actually getting replicated. They're building the same exact floor plan in Kalamazoo right now, right? So sharing what we're doing and really talking about it and letting it be a case study for others is so impactful in creating community change, like at home and afar.
Thank you, Jenifer. One thing that really struck me as you were speaking is that you can tell that you really do care, and your phrase about it's how you care. It just really hit home for me, and your care is very evident.
Well, thank you. I know some of you on this call, and I know that you guys care just as much, if not more. Any questions?
Feel free to share with one another some of the partner opportunities that you're involved with locally. I know we do have some live work opportunities that are happening. Some of you have been developers on buildings because there is that shortage of local developers who really do care, and you've been able to put that money back into the mission. Some of you have developed rental housing for people with autism and with churches and so forth as a developer, as a partner in the community. I agree with Alex. This was a wonderful presentation. It was great. Okay.
Right. I'd love to hear more of what everyone's doing. I know some of what Brian's doing. He's local. I know what my friend Jen Chappell is up to.
Yeah.
I will say I was pretty happy to hear when you said something about the 30-foot lot, because actually right behind one of your houses over on 11th Street, I just purchased a lot. We're tearing down the house because it's so bad. I was just going to give the property to the neighbors, but it's like, it's like a 45-foot lot. It's like, maybe we can do something with that. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting too, our standard lots in my area are either 50 foot or they're 60 foot, which really, we think of that as traditional, single family home has to fill that, but you can absolutely divide that lot. Or if you have alleys that run behind, you can do maybe a single family home, and then you can do an accessory dwelling unit and split it off where it's accessible by the back through the alley. So there's so many opportunities if we really think creatively about land and land use, which I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like, we're all addicted to building, right? We're all developers. We all see what could be rather than what is.
All right, everyone, you're singing Jenifer's praises there in the chat, which I'm sure is representative of all of us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. We know you're a very busy developer. So thank you for your time, and we look forward to having you join us again November 18th in partnership with the State Land Bank. That will be an intensive 3-hour session that hopefully you'll all take advantage of.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Okay.
fun.
Well, this
Thank
was a
you so
wonderful
much.
kickoff to our Affiliates in Motion conference. Jenifer, do you want the last word?
No, thank you so much for having me. Everything that you're doing amazes me. So keep up the great work. Like, continue to go out there and cultivate all of the incredible things within your communities, because your work is so impactful, and you get to see, the families that you can completely change the trajectory of the rest of their lives through the work that you do. So thank you.